Welcome everybody. My name is Chris Neto. I'm the market manager, account manager here at Starin. I'm obviously a nervous person sitting here with Joe Way, but we're going to give Joe, you are an intimidating, persona in the industry of AV. So it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on here, but we're just going to wait a few minutes as everybody files in, and we're going to kickstart our town hall and introduce everybody to HETMA, which is the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. So give us a few more seconds just to let everybody come in before we press go. And from that point on, if you guys have any questions to ask Joe, please submit them via the Q&A panel that you see at the bottom of the screen. We're going to be going through those Q&A questions after Joe gives a little brief introduction as to what he does and a little back and forth between me and Joe. We're here to answer your questions more so than anything else. So feel free to, if you have any questions, drop them in there and we'll get to them. And if you stay to the end, there will be a random drawing for an Amazon gift card for a lucky winner, and producer Mark will hit the randomizer button and find somebody in the audience to give that card to. So we'll be back in about 20 seconds. Let everybody file in. So it looks like we have a nice crowd, Joe. I told you, you are a...
Yeah. How did I go from not being able to get a date in high school to now being intimidated and guest on a webinar? This is great. You know, look how I've moved in life.
You definitely have put a little fear in me, and now I don't know if I want to ask these questions.
But don't worry, I won't rip off my shirt this time and do the AV as a service with that. That's gone. See, I did that when we, in your booth at Infocom, but I won't do that again. So,
So for those of you who do not know, today we are joined by Mr. or Dr. Joe Way, in certain parts of England, also known as Lord Dr. Joe Way. But Joe is the Director of Learning Environments at USC, and he is also one of the, quote me if I'm right or wrong on this, you are one of the founders of HETMA?
Correct. Yeah, myself.
Okay. So Joe is one of the
founders.
He's one of the co-founders. He is I guess, a worldly gentleman when it comes to all things higher ed. And obviously from the people that we have online, we want to talk about higher ed, the opportunities that have popped up along the way. And Joe has a very interesting story of how he quickly had to change everything that he had going on at USC from being a standard, that's the school you got to go, and you want to live that college experience on campus, to fully remote. And then he brings in nice buzzwords like hybrid and high flex and remote distance learning. And we're going to find out about that today in this conversation with Joe. Joe, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this. This is great. Thanks for the invite.
Hey, man. Thank you for coming. My first question, and let's start by asking the tough one. Well, the easy one for you. Tell us, what is HETMA and where is its roots?
Okay, yeah, you know what? HETMA is, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance. And, its roots come from the need to advocate for the higher ed vertical within the greater AV industry. We recognize that we have a buying power of over $5.2 billion annually as one sub-vertical. And I'm sure even with this kind of, quote unquote, new norm, hate the words, but let's say it's even gone up more. And so really what we recognize is that we are a sector of commercial integration. As we have professionals in our industry who are coming from industry, who are coming from integrators, who are getting certified, who are learning more. We have just as much, if not more, as I said, even if USC were on the SCN's top 50 integrators, we'd place in the 40s if we were actually our own integration company. So that, and we're not even the biggest. So if you start looking at that, is now a bunch of us have gotten together. The steering committee originally thought, well, how can we give this voice and amplify this voice? So therefore, we've held things like our 2 virtual conferences, special webinars and focus groups and that. And we've now just recently opened up to to general membership, both for those in higher ed as voting members and also partners outside of higher ed are welcome. So good, HETMA.org. There you go. Got to sneak my plug in.
Joe, you are the man of the plugs. I love it, man. You just drop a plug. No, there's not even a hesitation.
No shame.
There's no shame in your game. We appreciate that. It's interesting that, you bring up the term, and I've heard you speak about this before, the in-house integrators. And obviously the audience that we have here on the crowd are integrators. They're technology managers. I recognize some names just by looking on here that there are some HETMA members joining us in the audience. But it's interesting because as a former on-site technology manager that I was, but I wasn't on the higher ed side, I was on the corporate side, going to these trade shows has always been kind of weird because we were never really looked at as a former technology manager. We were never really looked at as an important cog, but you just hit the nail on the head with a $5.2 billion or billion dollar. Yeah, there's a lot of money in there, and obviously in the corporate space. What has happened? As somebody who's been in prior to USC, you spent time with Cal Baptist University as well. You've been doing this for a while. What has changed in the AV industry that now all of a sudden the technology manager went from being the gentleman or the lady who was delivering sandwiches and a projector to actually working on these high detailed specs?
Yeah, it's been something that's evolved over the last, really the last 5 years. If you go back 5 years from now, I think there was really still a change that we were seeing much more just as customers to be dealt with, rather than actually have a seat at the table. And and I don't want to throw integrators under the bus at all, but I will say that a lot of it had to do with when you have extremely high quotes and service that can't deliver our SLAs and the needs of the university. What happens is you start bringing people in-house and you say, okay, well, I need to bring someone in to handle, the 5-minute SLA, to handle the tier 1 ticket. So you bring that person in, right? Well, now you still need your integrators to, do all the installs and do all that. But then over time, those people who are brought in go, well, what if I get my own training? And what if I can now start doing this? And what if I can start doing my design? And then the teams start building. So it's something that kind of came from a need. And then it really just took off from there. And now I think that there's a really great partnership. And like we have at USC, we have a great partnership between what I think is the best team in all of higher ed, but also with our integrators, right? Who can come in and give us that cherry on top, who can supplement our team. And it's more of a partnership. And I think that's where this has happened. And I'm not rare. I think this has happened across the industry. So now you're right. 5 years ago, I went to, I go to show up at Infocom. They look at the color of my badge and they see, okay, oh, it's green, he's education. Yeah, sure. Well, here, this is great. And now they see it and they go, here, let's run you to our hush room and show you what's coming. And that's a change, right? From kind of turning around and going, okay, who's going to deal with this person, to we're going to make sure you know what's coming, because they see the volume and they see that we have those skills. And that's been a change in the industry.
Yeah, I've actually seen an evolution of a career path. As a matter of fact, it was never just, the AV person in a corporation or even in a university was a student worker who kind of just needed a job, and it became just a part-time job. And the person who ran it typically was just somebody either in IT or somebody who actually just kind of was working in the telecommunications. You handled phones, you can deliver a TV, right? You can go fix the pull down projector. Obviously technology has evolved, services has evolved. And you hit the nail on the head in what you said, that, bringing some of this stuff in-house made sense, especially on that first line of defense for problems. You cannot wait 24 hours for a response. It's not a teacher on a phone trying to deal with a help desk. It's first responder kind of mentality. So building that team, maybe that first level of responders are the student workers, but they're getting a little bit more knowledge on the products, whether it's an AV or IT piece, and they're not walking in there cold. The last thing I would want to do, at least going back in my own career, was, the last thing I hated doing was walking into a room full of 30 executives, and they're all standing around wondering why their conference is not happening. You want battle tested, you want proven people to get into the AV workforce. Hire anybody who's out on the field dealing with that kind of stress on a daily, hourly basis, and is what you get with an on-site technology manager. Plus, another thing that you do very well is, and you also mentioned that there is the time and the ability to get the certifications and the training to really understand it, and you get to, obviously you have the technology on site, so you're putting this into work, you're getting hands-on with the product. It's not like you're just dropping something and walking away. So that's the evolution of the technology manager. So there's a lot of validity in what you're going to talk about. So let's jump into what happened. Now, here we are 6 months into a quarantine. We all locked down. Obviously, universities were one of the first that were affected. Go home. Schools, obviously, people started homeschooling, and all the K through 12s came home. University is a different story. And, for years as an integrator and as a distributor and as a manufacturer, we were talking to universities about distance learning. You guys were better prepared for distance learning than maybe the K through 12 schools. But when everything came to a screeching halt, you guys already had plans in place, at least from a foundation perspective. And I'm speaking from this because obviously me and Joe had a little bit of pregame prior to this, so I got a little bit of the knowledge. So Joe already had kind of the foundation in place. The lines were there, the fiber was there, the high-speed internet connections and all those type of things were kind of there already. But what you brought to the table was the design for these high flex spaces. So it's the show floor is yours, sir.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So, I'm going to I'll answer it in kind of two parts. I'll say for us, but also, according to higher ed in general. I've said that we were in a very unique place because prior to COVID, we are going through our digital transformation. We were already reevaluating where is technology going. And I had the pleasure of basically being able to rip out 250, 300 rooms worth of stuff and start from scratch and rebuild the enterprise. That rarely ever happens. That being said, part of that in looking at, okay, if I, allowed to do everything over, design the perfect system, I knew that the convergence is no longer AV and IT. The convergence is AV and UC, right? That's where we were going. Now, it's based in IT principles, and that's where we were. We were behind in that. So that's really where I built our systems on it and thought, we have to get mics, cameras, everything, in not just the handful of signature rooms, but every room. Every single space needs to be able to be bi-directional. We have to be able to get, and for us, again, I wasn't looking at it as a pandemic at the time. I was looking at it as, what if we have experts in the field in Asia and Africa who now we can have them call into class. We can have guest teachers. Maybe you can, want to steal away the highest, the best faculty in the world that might be maybe living over where the Ivy Leagues are. Well, guess what? Now, what if they don't even have to move and they can call in to class and teach that remotely? And those were things I was already thinking about. And then the pandemic happens. Now that's where we kind of have this equalizer where we all had to say, all right, Friday the 13th in March, we're all going online. Everything is happening. We all have to make this pivot. God, I hate that word, but you know what? And we did. But that was temporary. That was, let's just save this. Let's save the semester. Let's make it through, and then look forward. This is where now, as an industry, we had to say, what are we going to do? Where are our priorities going to be? The priorities now have to be safety of our students. How can we continue education, keep them safe? And that meant cameras and microphones in rooms. That meant highly flexible spaces. That meant, and kind of the buzzword in higher ed right now is high flex, highly flexible. What if we bring everybody back? Well, maybe everyone's remote. Maybe only the faculty are there. Maybe only the students are there. Maybe it's half and half. Finding these spaces that can accommodate that. And we used to talk about the flipped classroom. Well, flipped classroom just meant put a bunch of screens around a room and let teach however you want. Now it meant teach how you have to, teach how you can survive. And so now that's where we developed our spaces from, every room gets the Hudley or, an Aver or a D10 or those types of things, into those spaces so that we can now make them usable in any way the faculty or students need. And that's where this kind of came about. And I think higher ed is doing the same thing. obviously at different levels. Again, I was blessed to be able to completely blank slate it. But I think that that's also the trend. You know, I mean, we're here talking about the pulse. Well, the pulse is that's the trend, right? Maybe if everyone did enough to make it through, probably did a bunch of upgrades over the summer, but now it's okay. We will never again be able to design any space without taking that into account because we don't have an excuse again.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be another pandemic. It can be snow days, right? It can be hurricanes. It can be whatever. For us here, it can, you know, as you can see outside the director's office behind me, the beautiful weather. You know, this is earthquake weather going on right here. So that could happen. So now these things have no excuse. And so I think that's the way we're looking.
First of all, I think that's a wonderful virtual background because obviously I have no idea what you're talking about in New Jersey. That doesn't exist. That's a painting. Very good, very sharp. I'm happy for you that you have this great virtual background, Joe. So I'm reminded of a conversation that we had a few months back, and this was early on in the pandemic stage, in the early days of shutdown. Pandemic stage, that was odd. But the early days of shutdown, where you came online and we were chatting and you dropped a number that just, for me, it kind of blew my hair back. All of a sudden, you went from a handful of calls, you know, maybe a few hundred calls. All of a sudden, you dropped a number in the 25,000 range. It was something that was unheard of at the time for a provider. And you obviously are using a product like Zoom. Zoom turnaround came to you, worked with you on this, and you were able to handle, you know, early on, you were talking about 25,000 students just online. And that was, you know, within a week, 2 weeks of your systems, basically everybody going home. You turned it back on and here comes 25,000 kids. How has that changed? Has that number grown? And what happened? Because that's quite an impressive number. And for those that are listening and you know that are watching this podcast, that's not a small feat. You've heard, and I'm not going to play shy about this. We've all heard of the outages and the knockdowns and this, and my God, I can't get through. You don't have that same story because you got, you know, the story that I heard was that you had conversations and you knew that this was going to happen. And those conversations turned into build the pipe, get everything together. What are your numbers like today? I mean, are you still dealing with this unimaginable, unfathomable type number happening on a daily occurrence?
Yeah, I didn't look it up, but I want to say we're somewhere around 35,000 or so, you know, plus. And I think it's about 20,000 simultaneously at a peak, like peak hours. Of course, there's a difference now from when we first did this as our test. I remember I kind of threw out those numbers when we did the test and found out, by the way, the Zoom traffic wasn't even high. Like it still wasn't the highest. Still like we're in third in all of our traffic, but which was interesting. But that was when everyone was on campus. So now, of course, everyone is off campus. So the impact is less, but yet we have our rooms running 24/7. They're all, you know, Zoom enabled. But we see those numbers coming up. It'll be interesting next semester when we move to this hybrid and the students are coming back right now. That is the plan. And we start seeing this cross amount. But I think that we're at about 35,000 or so peak per day. So, which is pretty crazy. But you know, it's become the way that the students have to learn. You know, there was the Times Higher Education just came out with the article today noting that even enrollments are only down 2% across the country. There's been this talk about how higher ed is going to be so impacted. Students are going to take a year off. This is going to happen. The fact is that didn't happen. People still said, you know what, we're in this. You know, you can't blame the schools that they all have to go online, and people are finding a way to make it work. So we've had to put that infrastructure and, you know, coming together with our partners and knowing, and to give kudos to like Zoom, who really comes in and goes, look, we've got to make a priority in this. We have to be able to say and deliver this. And yes, there's the random outage and there's just things that make the news. Okay, the outage that happens for 4 hours. Okay, the other 64 hours that week, it worked fine, right? And that happens once a month. it happens, right? Everything is going to drop. Something is going to happen. We could all be on campus and we can have a power outage and all the classes go down, right? I mean, you have to look at there's the cost of doing business, and we've had these partnerships now, and these partners who've really come through and knocked it out of the park for us. And you see the numbers, and they're going well. The students are adapting, the faculty are adapting, and to make this successful because you have no other choice but to.
Yeah. So let's get into the classrooms now, because I'm sure there's a lot of people on here that are itching to find out. What did you do inside the classrooms to change the classrooms from a standard classroom to what you have now? Specifically, what's the design looking like these days? As obviously somebody who has just done a big revamp, what are the necessary things? And then the other question is going to be, teachers obviously are still coming into the room to broadcast out to students and have that conversation. Obviously your network may be more stable than a teacher's at home, but I guess the second part to that question is, are you also equipping the university staff with the ability to work from home, similar to what most of the other, I guess, verticals in the world of AV are kind of doing? That would be my question. So go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot in that one. So the quick one, yes, we're allowing them to do it from home. We're allowing them to do it from campus. It really, it's up to the comfort level of the faculty. We find some just don't want to come back because there's a vaccine, some don't, right? And some just are dying to be back in the classroom. They want their chalkboard, whiteboard. They want the experience, and we created that space for them too. The design of our system, again, goes back to a philosophy that I hold. And that was, again, looking at the direction of our industry and knowing, so I was challenged really by my CIO to, as he said, bring me crazy, bring me the best, show me how we can do this. And so I'm very much into anything that can be software defined, cloud defined. So we have moved all of our true AV over IP solution. If there was a cloud option, if there was a software option, that's what we did. So all of our rooms essentially are based on, based on being a Zoom room with we have a software-based DSP, we have AV over IP for all of our content transmission, but also we use HTML for all of our touch panels and the occupancy control. So now with that allows us to integrate with all of our systems, right? So because now we can pull APIs from everything, we have fully voice controlled rooms. They're smart, they're tied in with our scheduling. So the room already knows who's walking in the room, and faculty member says start class, it connects them, and their room starts, their Zoom starts, they're right there. They don't have to do anything. So because we were able to step into that, and that's using the software-based codecs that are already the direction that we were moving in. And then all we really had to do was add the peripherals. Add a projector if we, if the class needed it. If you're teaching somewhere where the people are away, you're not really going to turn the projector on. But to give, make sure that the cameras are in there. I'm a huge fan of, I love the Hudley camera. I think as a faculty member, and this is personal. All right, I know half people are going to disagree with me. I hate, I can't stand PTZ cameras. I don't know. There's something about them because I think that it makes the faculty member have to be a producer. So the fact that when you can get if they have to move it around, so a smart USB cam that can follow and can basically auto crop the 4K image into something smaller. I know, I get it, how it works. And use a ceiling microphone and take it so that the faculty member doesn't have to produce their class. They come in, they're the experts, they do their thing, let the technology work for them. And then that's where we move to. And what we noticed is just starting that as a backbone, we've been able to keep adding and really create a white glove service and a monitoring service. And these things are all possible because we're based in a software cloud ecosystem as opposed to older legacy types of systems. And I'm really excited to see how it continues to grow and the options that are kind of going from there. And again, I think that's the pulse of where we're going. We already see the manufacturers doing it, right? If you watched, whether it be Crestron Next a few weeks ago, look at the entire product line move that direction, right? That's where things are going. All of the major manufacturers are moving that way. All of our, the D10 is a great example of an all-in-one device, right? That gives you everything in a simple office, setup or a small huddle room type of setup. Because the huddle room, well, you never go back to huddle room because of COVID. COVID's going to be over. You're going to go back to a huddle space. And even when it's not, okay, so now the person just has room to join in and do their class, right? And teach a class from, that type of space, which is what we did. We took every one of our group study spaces, ripped out all the TVs with the HDMI, and we put a D10, right in each one of them. Now we have an integrated space that people could teach from learn from, can collaborate in, and no matter what. It's thinking about that whole thing, and we look at everything in our ecosystem and think of it holistically from that one point of view.
Yeah, that's impressive. That every space can be turned into a learning space these days. It's just a matter of foresight. It's amazing though. You touched on the needs analysis and the user analysis that has to go into this sort of thing, and you quickly came to the conclusion, which many I guess fight, which is we don't need every button of every feature on a panel, for example, anymore. If you know that you are dealing with a teacher who needs to present and to talk forward, and you have an auto tracking, auto format, auto framing, EPTZ type camera in front of them that can track them along, that's all they need. And I think for a lot of conversations, and me and you have had this conversations on the side, where, if you had to do a touch panel and that touch panel came with a how to operate that touch panel, you failed. Not only as somebody who has collected a needs analysis, but you failed as a programmer because you made it so tough that you need to read a panel or a book to understand how to work a touch panel. And you're 100% correct in that the teachers need to teach, not worry about the technology. And I think ultimately that has always been the unicorn that a lot of AV people have looked for, at least one button press, or get it down to a button press and on, if that. And in some cases, voice is taking care of that. That's a whole other topic for debate. Anybody who wants to debate that, more than welcome to. Find Joe on Twitter. He will gladly gladly debate you on the how valuable voice can and can't be in the space. So we do have some questions coming in. The first question is from this gentleman by the name of Graham Kirkpatrick. He asks, how transferable is the current strategy within USC once the crisis subsides, ensuring that questions around the initial investments are scrutinized unfairly and unnecessarily?
I did. So, a couple things. One, and here, I'm going to actually respond to what you had just said before you gave the question to answer this question.
Okay.
Because, again, when you start looking at user-centered design,
Mm-hmm.
you start improving the total overall experience for your faculty, right? I'm very big on user-centered design. I hate when I walk up to a touch panel and it takes me 4 page flips to get the dang thing on, right? Or to get the HDMI or the wireless sharing selected. And you have to do this. And then the one thing I really hate, the "Are you sure?" pop up. I'm sure because I hit the button, right? Imagine if you're on your iPhone, every time you tried to open an app, something popped up and said, "Are you sure that you want to open that?" Like, no, I pushed it. I want it. But you see that so over-designed. And so what we did is we took our design and we sent it to our Center for Excellence in Teaching. We brought in faculty and said, you tell us what's wrong with this. You talk us through it. Tell me what you do. And we actually said, I want you to teach a lesson. What do you do? Well, I come on over here and I want to start class, and then I want to do this and whatever. And that was one of the little epiphanies we said. And I kind of say this, it's a good example. Our thing doesn't say system on and system off. It says start class and end class, right? That's a faculty member's point of view. That's the user's point of view. And so now we've taken that across the board. Now to answer Graham's question, okay, so where's the investment? Well, I invested in my users first. I didn't invest in the pandemic. And so now I can justify this. And again, we were also in a unique situation because I did this pre-pandemic, right? So the money was actually already transferred. All the pandemic did was meant I didn't have to start it in May. I got to start it in March because the campus was clear. But the fact is now, because of that kind of white glove, automated service that we've been able to give, it's a no-brainer. The faculty who came in can't stop, just expressing how great the systems are. that, and just the change that has happened, we're finding the opposite. Now it's how many more of these can you do? Can you find our campus partners and do more of these? You know, we're a federated environment. I actually control only about 55, 60% of campus. Well, what about these other 40? Can we consult them and bring the same thing? Because people are excited about the fact that AV is centered around their needs, not around what some AV designer decided it needed to do and the way a programmer thought it should go, right? And so that's really how this will never be scrutinized, because we've actually focused on the teachers and students.
So for the teacher and student work environments in the classrooms, you have got that figured out. Are you saying, and I know the answer to this, but I have to ask the question, are you saying that custom integration is not in the university space anymore? I obviously will say, yes, it is. And what are the spaces that you're designating where the custom integration is going into?
Yeah, well, you know, that's an interesting one. And I think it's so funny. So on, you know, on my podcast, I actually ask this question pretty often of where is that, you know, where's the balance between standardization and personalization, right? And it's an interesting one that we have to walk in higher ed, because we are talking about things, you know, you don't want a faculty member walk into one room and having one experience, walk to another one and have another experience, right? They have to be the same. Yet you have unique spaces. So I think it starts with the baseline. I think for sure that custom programming is still needed, and can be effective based on the user's needs. Certain departments need more, you know, whether the engineering department or business school classroom might be a lot more advanced than, say, the humanities classrooms, right? That are, you know, just really expensive PowerPoint players, essentially. But, you know, and so therefore, you have to be able to say is, where can I take my baseline? And this is what we do, is we start with a baseline, and then we can do the plus plus, add this on, add that on. And so I think that's where our, you know, I mean, it's so hard. Because I think the days, though, when you say custom program, I think the days of the signature room are going away. You know, there was always when you did a higher ed project, 13 regular rooms, and then the one room you spent half the budget on to kind of have this showcase space. I think that that's going away from an AV point of view, because the technology is allowing us to more easily send content to any screen. It's more easily able to use routing and use programming to do that, rather than, you know, large video matrices and stuff. So I think it's interesting.
What I was jabbing you about was, you know, there's obviously still the auditoriums, right? There's still kind of the cafeterias that are kind of like, hey, we have this big space, can we? Do you simplify those spaces? Or is it now, you know, one of the, you know, for any integrator that may be on here, the biggest kind of moment when they walk onto either a corporate space or any universities was typically the divisible room. It was the room when divisible came into the conversation in divisible spaces, it meant we have a big space, we need multiple spaces in that same space. We don't know what the configuration's ever going to be, so it left a lot of unknowns. I don't know if those divisible spaces are going to continue. I think they're just going to be the smaller spaces. But I think what Zoom and a lot of these conferencing tools have done is that they've also now made it very simple to connect rooms within campuses. I know from a corporate environment, it was a big no-no. You walked across campus. I had 40 buildings on campus. You walked across campus to take part in the meeting. There wasn't, hey, you sit in your building, you know, a mile away and we'll connect you, because you weren't wasting that bandwidth in between buildings. It was expected that you come to where the host conference was. Right. And at the same token, to turn on a conversation in a corporate space where you were at a, you know, there was a presentation going on in an auditorium and you wanted the entire campus to see it, it was always very cautious as far as how many people could actually turn on that stuff if your bandwidth can handle it. But at the same token, you also wanted people in the space. So you walk this weird fine line. I don't think those rooms are completely dead, especially in the auditorium spaces. But has the divisible training room, multi-purpose, we have no idea who's going to move into this space, kind of, are those rooms now kind of taking a seat back to standard rooms?
You know, when we have our design, we actually only have two designs. We call our type 1 and type 2. It's really creative in those names. And and it's basically this. Here's the entire system is the same. What's the difference between a type 1 and type 2? A type 2 has more than one screen.
Wow.
That's it. Whether it be more projector or more displays. That's it. Because everything is routing now. Once you become IT centric, it's just routing your signal where you want to go. The input amounts are the same. You know, we might have a random exception. And now when you talk about divisible rooms, we do the same. So we're just, you know, we have some type 2s, which just means more than one screen, that have 7 screens. But it's still the same base system. It's just more decoders, right? That's it. And what you're going to send to those decoders. So that really is the only change. I take it back. We technically have a 2A assisted listening too, is thrown in there. That's the only difference. So I think too, and as you said, even when you bring up the point about overflow, well, once you've made all of your rooms, you know, Zoom rooms, you know that every space on campus is now overflow because all it has to do is call into that original room. That's all it has to do, and it just became an overflow room. Now, you have the latency of the Zoom call, of course, but that's, you know, if you're on the far end, as usually you're not doing too much two-way communication. That just answered that, and it didn't cost me anything, right? What would that cost to do overflow in the old legacy systems, just in copper wire running it between rooms, and then the larger matrix, switch you had to have, and the big closet, and where you're going to patch what, that's gone. Anywhere is now an overflow at zero additional cost, and that's a huge change.
So it all comes back to the main centric design and how the networks are being developed on these campuses. So for the technology managers that are on site, I guess the underlying tip is beef up your network as much as possible, get those switches updated and upgraded, and then start worrying about how you're going to transport that, what used to be a bandwidth hog, known as AV, across those channels. And life will be simpler and everything will be, man, Joe, you painted a very pretty picture, almost as pretty as the background, fake virtual background that you're sitting in front of.
I know.
Awesome.
Awful.
So,
I'm gonna hate going over to lunch right there too.
Yeah.
Fake virtual background.
So Graham has put away another 2 questions. We're going to get to those right now. So the first question or the second question that Graham has, and again, to the audience that is listening, if we haven't answered any of your questions, please do submit questions. If you have any questions that we haven't brought up, please, by all means, send and submit that. So Graham Kirkpatrick has a question regarding question 2, how are USC continually monitoring adoption or changes in the student and lecture demands and sentiments?
All right. So monitoring adoption is a big thing, right? And getting the faculty, because, and I think it was even mentioned earlier or in our pre-chat, I don't remember, that you have faculty who have been in spaces, if they've taught their way for 20 years, 40 years, and now all of a sudden we have this paradigm shift to an online. And then we also have, new technology. And this is one of the things that we had to worry about, right? First off, you don't want, no faculty member wants to walk into a room after summer and find out whatever surprise the AV team decided to do. And now they have to relearn something. And we did that across an enterprise. And now we're having to do it through and learn how to teach differently as well because of hybrid, high flex, online learning. So it was multiple sides of it. So I actually have someone on my staff whose her role is to focus on our faculty training. That's it. She is a tech person who schedules training, monitors training, goes through with the faculty, walks them through it, shows up to their first classes, and helps them through. The thing is she comes back almost every day saying, oh, they're really excited because the systems made sense, right? And I think as you made the point, if you have to have an instruction sheet on how to use the system, you've already lost, right? If it's not 100% intuitive, And that's really what we focused on so that they can figure it out. And so adoption has been great. And in fact, you know, the best people are for us. The faculty are telling the other faculty, you need to go use this because it's fantastic. And that has never happened in our campus. That's actually pretty rare that it's the faculty who are becoming our champions of this. And they're the ones who are reaching out to my bosses saying, this is the greatest thing that we've seen. And that's now, again, now you know the technology is working for you. And that's really, you know, but how you would, and if I had to give it, give suggestion on how to monitor adoption, take one of your team and just, that's their job. Just find somebody, their job is 100% about the faculty, because that's how you can keep a pulse on how they're feeling, where they are. Get into, every university has a Center for Excellence in Teaching type of thing, and teaching and learning department. They have those. Get someone on those councils, get them to there, present it, build the conversations.
Awesome. We got 2 questions. I'm going to combine 2 questions from Kristen Spiewak. First question is, in one of your typical room, what screen sizes are you using? Her second question, which kind of dovetails into that, is what's the room setup? So we'll just answer both of those questions in one conversation. I'm assuming that when you're talking about typical room sizes, she's referring to the teacher in the room speaking what monitor the teacher's currently using. Obviously, once students come back, there's going to be a focus on what the front of the room monitor size is going to be as well. But I'll leave it up to you, sir.
Yeah. So I guess answering it kind of 2 ways. Our standard room and the setup is essentially well, we worked with Heckler Designs. We have a custom classroom credenza, which you know is fantastic. So we worked with them to redesign how all of our AV is stored. It's basically just a 8-rack unit. It's only 4 wide, so on each side, that hangs on the wall, and that's our setup where they set their equipment. But then because all of our rooms are fully wireless and all of that, they have the freedom to walk around. Usually whiteboard, chalkboard, drop down screen. I say it's around 120 inches ish, give or take, and then any competence monitors are standard 55 for the faculty. Now, for answering the pandemic, we are rolling in the D10s, so the 55-inch D10s in our spaces to use, so they can look at that and use that as their competence monitor and join class that way. We've also hijacked it too, so that we can use an external headset and the room microphone. So we have all of the ceiling mics and all that. So it actually joins, every room is a Zoom room as the main setup. So therefore the D10 joins the Zoom room, and then they join, and it takes the IO of the room. And I don't know, that's what my programmers do. I just see the lines on the paper that connect all these things.
Because
I know, I designed it and then told my team, you go figure out how to do it. And so that's pretty much the setup. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's pretty much how we do it. And then one thing that we are going to change, even saying the learning curve, not all of our standard rooms, our large lecture halls had confidence monitors, but we've now created these production spaces where we've brought in the D10s. I think those are never leaving. I think that one thing we're going to do this next summer is try to figure out how to put a confidence monitor in every room that can then take the external, not just for, if it needs to just be the PowerPoint so they can see it, great, but really so they can take the far end students and have that seen, right? Because once we do start getting people back and you now need to use the projector and the screen, now where do you put the people? So there's kind of things to kind of still be decided, but this is where I actually think that COVID and being this high flex environment helped us, because we now have a time where we can learn. Yeah. If everybody was back, we'd be stuck with what we have. Now we can really take time to engage our faculty and figure out what parts are working and what aren't, and make those changes this next summer. We can adapt that.
And for those that don't know, if you look over my shoulder, you'll see a D10 on a cart behind me. So I too have one, and it is based off, obviously it uses the Zoom interface. So it's familiarity. So if anything is really going back and forth here, is that Zoom UI is familiar to these teachers. If it's in front of them, or it's behind them, or it's on their phone on the app, it's something that they are very aware of and know how to use. So that is a I would say that would be a key feature to it. We got a few more questions, Joe. If you have time, I'd love to get these questions out.
Do it.
Let's do it. So Graham's third question, because Graham only talks in groups of 3. He has this thing about the number, I guess. It's something to do with Jordan and 23, and he takes the 3 off the Jordan. Anyway, you are a key resource. Who are the key resource function roles inside of USC and outside of IT and AV for the execution of the technology strategy? In other words, who are you collaborating with, or is it strictly the Joe Way show, or are you bringing and pulling? I know you're pulling the end users, and that's a key part of your needs analysis. But when it comes to the decision making, is it rolling back up to CIO, or is it going to stay more closely to the everyday users and the feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, I'm very blessed where I am, that I have the CIO that gives me full power and full authority to make all the decisions, and that's backed up by our provost office too. So I'm very lucky that, as I said, this design is something that I designed, and I designed it with our partners. We did a lot of research and development with myself and my team. We worked with our manufacturer partners really well, talked to them about what was possible, but all the decisions came up to me. And that was really, even when we went, I always joke around when I took this and said, imagine what we'll just share all the dollars, but imagine the cost of ripping out 300 rooms, doing a full new ecosystem, and doing all that. And the budget meeting, when I presented this, I kid you not, took 15 minutes, and they said, okay. All they said is, are you sure you can do this? And you can bring this value and this type of learning experience to our students? And I, of course, said yes. And then I freaked out after I left the room. Like, oh, crap, I really have to do it now, because I didn't think they would say yes to the whole thing. But it was us. I'm very lucky in my situation to have full power to do that. But again, also our manufacturer partners, every one of them. We had to get involved with our integrators too, and just taking the knowledge and the collective knowledge.
It's a full partnership.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, from the get-go. I can see that in the tone of your voice, and I know that's where you went with this, because you can't pull off something like this without full cooperation, not only from the manufacturers and the distributors, but also from the integrators, who are the feet on the street, who are trying to put the product in front of you. So kudos again to you, sir, for doing that. A few more questions. Andy Vogel asks, did you find that you were able to join collab with departmental campus IT groups as a response to the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to. The good thing is we fall under central IT, which was great. It makes it really easy when they are a parallel group to us under the CIO. So therefore, and even though we're a federated university, the main IT side is a little more centralized. I mean, at least as far as our backbone, our network, and the switch, all that stuff, the stuff that, it still surprised the heck out of them. When you take a sheet saying, this is the kind of network traffic we're going to have, and then they start seeing it in volume. Okay, it was a learning curve, but it was a great partnership. So it helped that we were together with that. And so that was very lucky that, my office, before it went away because of, the pandemic, it was only 2 down from the director of networking. So
awesome. Next question is coming in from Nick Young. He actually has 2 questions, so we'll go with the first one. What size room do you find the Hudley works best in? How large of a space can be covered with that style of auto framing camera, in your opinion? Obviously, every manufacturer spec sheet, and we obviously distribute Hudley, every manufacturer spec sheet has kind of that like golden, ratio of where it could lie in. What has been your feet on the street, Joe Way observation of where the Hudley's sweet spot is?
Yeah, I would say and I tell you what we found out, because we didn't know until we put it in a room and tried it. At about those, say, 32 to 36 person rooms, right? That's about where you're at, which is good size. Your medium-sized classroom, they work fine. We actually mount ours right next to the. So for the design, and if people reach out to me, I actually share the design. Yeah, I don't care. It's not rocket science. But another reason I like the Hudleys is because NVX will pass USB backwards. and pass it back through it. So therefore, we hang the Hudley right next to the projector. And then it just connects into the NVX that feeds the projector. And that's how we get it back to the Zoom.
And it tracks the teacher as the teacher moves around. Awesome.
So again, you're just talking about the front of the room. So therefore, the size of the room doesn't matter. Again, as you get longer, that's where you get the issues, right? Because it will kind of crop weird and not follow as well. But it's been fine. It's much larger spaces, and we do move to more traditional PTZ cameras.
Okay. Next question from Nick. Now that he's asked about the camera, he wants to know about some audio. What is your ideal microphone solution for a standard classroom? You mentioned ceiling mics. I'm assuming you're going to give me about 100 different flavors of it, simply based on not all classrooms are the same, but what is your preference?
Well, I will do, I'm not going to do hundreds. I'm just going to do 2. Okay. We use the MXA 910 or 710. That's it, depending upon the size of the room, and it connects into the IntelliMix DSP.
And obviously these are Zoom approved solutions, so they work just plug and play with Zoom. So it is it makes life a little easier. There you go, the MX 710 and 910s. All right, next question comes from your hold on, your buddy Donovan Monday.
Who's also steering committee member of HETMA. Yeah.
Yeah, he wants to put in his 2 cents and see if he can stump you. Do you see a permanent shift to hybrid learning and to the end of the all-in-person classroom? Easy where you go with that, because I don't know if it's ever going to be that way. Is it, Joe? I mean, you're there every day.
Gosh, flip a coin. And we'll see. I do believe that there is a sense, especially for a traditional, Donovan, he's at West Virginia, he's a traditional university, myself at USC. So, I think that we are about the brick and mortar campus experience, right? So I think that while there will be a transition back, I don't think hybrid learning is going anywhere. No. I think it will shift. And like I even mentioned before, the ability now to have faculty anywhere in the world, that we can bring in the best talent from anywhere because they can call into the class. Like, all I need now is a graduate assistant in the room, right? The faculty can teach from from anywhere. They can screen share onto the screen, and I have a graduate assistants and TAs to be able to proctor the class. That changes everything. Is that hybrid learning? I would argue it is, even if all the students end up returning. But also, I think, it's just the sense of when students are sick, they don't have to miss class, right? Just in general. So I think that it'll be a mix. It's not ever going to be like it is now, for sure. It'll swing back, but I don't think it'll swing all the way back.
Excellent. Next question is from Peter Nostrand. Do you have cameras pointing at whiteboards, or is all the content PC based?
Do I have cameras pointing at the whiteboards? Well, we just have the Hudleys are in the room, and it captures the whiteboard as well as the faculty member. We have them on. So our programming does this. By default, it auto crops. But then we also have presets. If they do walk over, click the camera button, it'll bring up presets, which just is the board, a close-up shot of one board, close-up shot of the other, in case they just want to send that out.
Yep, and just on a side note, Hudley actually released an ARM for one of their cameras. Yeah. They now can do the above kind of reverse shot onto a whiteboard, and you can permanently mount that right above any standard whiteboard. That's something that they just recently released within the last, I guess, 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful solution too. So we've done that in 2 of our spaces. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Next question comes from, again, well, this one is another HETMA member, James King. Asks, sounds like the center around relationships. How do you build that relationship with outside folks, inside folks, and even within your own team?
Yeah, it all comes down to relationships, right? I mean, everything is relationships. And, I think there's 2 keys to building relationships everywhere. One is a lot of coffee meetings. 2, be vulnerable. I think so often we come in trying to sell what we want to do, instead of listening to the needs, right? I mean, and it's funny because, you know, James working at, you know, he's at Stockton there in New Jersey. And, you know, we talk as, you know, colleagues all the time about integrators or managers who come and try to sell everything. I want to sell, so sell this. And all we all tell them is, well, why don't you come and listen to my problem before you try to sell me something? But yet we go to our users, we go to our bosses, we go and we say, we want to do this and we want to do this. We want this new technology. But have we taken the time to listen to our users? Are we going to take our own advice? Yeah. Right? And so by being vulnerable, by being able to say, look, I want to know what your needs are. And when you do that, they will then go, we're not going to tell you what technology you have put in, as long as it solves the problems for us. And that's where that relationship starts building. But I think just starting with coffee, tell your story, really know that you're, no matter what, and I say this all the time, I'm not afraid to spend money, but I will never waste money. I will never waste a penny of the student's tuition. And I will always ensure that the single best customer service we can give is my priority, both for the students and the faculty. And then of course, you know, in individual groups, alumni, those type of things, they also use our spaces. I lead with that line. And do you know how that changes and forms the conversation? Mm-hmm. Because now I can listen to what their needs are and what they want, and we can start to form and design together. And then they trust me more to the solution because I can say, I've solved this problem. Now here's the technology and the price tag and all the stuff that I need to do that. That makes it really easy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we have something in common there, Joe, is that when I was technology manager, I was an internal person. I worked for the corporation, so I was part of a pharmaceutical company. We had our team of outsourced professionals that were working, handling the AV services and doing everything we needed to do. But I would not ever refer to my coworkers as coworkers. I always refer to them as our clients. And it was that kind of mindset, because you will never, you know, the client is always right. It was a customer service centric mindset. And it was weird because I was actually, you know, interviewed with a magazine, and the publication asked, you know, aren't these your coworkers? Do you not get a check from the same people they do? And I said, absolutely I do. But the minute I step away from calling them an end user, for some reason we lose sight and we don't treat them the same. So it was that customer service relationship, and that you're working for them, even though they're technically all on the same team, was a game changer for me and how I delivered service. And I'm sure that is kind of in your ethos as well, and how you're delivering service there as well. So and I just changed, all of a sudden my screen blew up. We actually have one last question from George Fournier, if you have time, and then we'll get to our $50 Amazon gift card that we're giving away. The question from George is, do you think this pandemic tech and teaching change will inspire classroom layout changes, i.e. furniture, modular construction, space aspects, etc.? That's the future question, Joe. So go ahead. Are we on spaceships? Are we what are we doing in the future for schools, and how is this going to lay out the conversations that architects will soon have?
Absolutely. The answer is yes. It will inspire changes. I think also we've been able to get in early. I think our value, I've been preaching this, that the pandemic gave us a seat at the table. I'm in meetings with the highest level executives that maybe wouldn't have been invited to before. Now it's a matter of keeping that seat at the table, which means we now have a voice. And I think that voice is being amplified by the need of being able to survive the pandemic, but even moving forward, keeping in mind to be able to go back and continue to serve our customers in the best way we possibly can, means that yes, and physical layouts will change in order to allow us to solve that. There will always be the traditional lecture halls, traditional auditoriums, you know, huddle spaces, all these things, but I think the flexibility will end up counting for more.
Sounds great. So let's get to the $50 winner, and producer Mark is put the names of everybody who is here into the randomizer, and the person who is going to receive a $50 Amazon gift card for coming on the show today is Greg Corner. We have your information, Greg. We will be sending a $50 Amazon gift card your way. hopefully you can go ahead and use that for something cool. I wish I had $50 on an Amazon gift card about now. That'd be kind of good. So we're all set with that. We will move to the next slide. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a full hour of conversation, of good quality conversation, in my opinion. I hope everybody here who has been on the town hall likes what they saw, likes what they hear. Please let us know. Joe can be found on the various interwebs. Joe, can you give us some information on where people can find you and HETMA?
Absolutely, yes. So I am on all social media at Josiah Way, so Josiah Way or josiahway.com. You can find me there. As well, please do look up HETMA, and it's hetma.org or hetma_org, pretty much on all the socials. So, and thank you very, very much, Chris, for inviting me.
Hey man, it's been fun. It's been good. It's always a good time to have a conversation with you because, first of all, you're very animated. I get to have a very animated conversation with you, which is great because you're very passionate about what you do, and that comes out when you speak. Not only does it come out when you speak, but it's also you know, you're no nonsense when it comes to the business, and you're able to translate how the business is done. And hopefully the people that are here get a better idea of what's going on in the higher end world. Like I said, you can reach out to Joe at any time. Joe is easily accessible across the World Wide Web. You obviously have dropped that information. Find him on Twitter, find him on LinkedIn, connect with him. He is personable in that sense. He will absolutely even give you design plans. That's the type of person Joe is. So thank you again for joining us. For everybody who is here, the next town hall will be on October 29th. That is another mystery person. Actually, no, it's not a mystery. We will be attending Zoomtopia in October. So the next focus of our town hall will be a Zoomtopia kind of overview and review of what we saw, what Zoom has coming out. So please join us October 29th. We'll have some special guests. That's kind of the mystery of who may be joining us. We'll keep that under wraps for now. Joe, thank you again, once again, for joining us. You have some people saying thanks, and
a fight on to Lisa. I see that.
Yes, and Lisa's fighting on, and Mr. Kern is a winner. He's saying thanks online. Thanks again, everybody. My name's Chris Neto. I am a market development manager here at Starin. You can find us at Starin_MKG on the Twitters. You see all of our little social channels along the bottom of the sign. Give us a like, give us a follow. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help. We're all, kind of hanging in there, doing what we can to help you guys out, and bringing you a show like the town hall and people like Joe onto a show to give you guys a better idea of what's going on outside of the small bubble is what we plan and hope to do. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and hope to see you next month at the September town hall.